Hey, this is John. Welcome back to Modern Old School Developer. In the last episode, we worked on integration test. We were able to see that when we selected a movie from the list, it added our form elements and enabled the form controls. But there are other actions we might want to test, like adding or moving an actor or category, or updating the movie data. We might even want to test what happens if we switch movies. Does the form update properly? Alright, so why don't we go try out some of those things. Alright, so the first thing I want to do inside our main page test is make some changes to our before each function. Let's make it a bit more complicated. So before each of these tests, we're going to need to make sure we have a couple things, because we won't be able to test anything on this page unless we've loaded the data and selected a movie, because until then, everything is basically disabled. So let's move these things that we had in our main test over to our before each. Let's put that, and let's put this selection in there as well. All right, that should be good. Needs to be an async function though. And now we are making sure that before we run any test, we will be done with the loading, and we will have selected the movie ID of 1, which is Lord of the Rings, the only movie in our mock list right now. All right, if we hit save, let's go back to our test and make sure that still works. By the way, because we're changing mock service worker, it might be a little bit confused about what things have changed. If you want to just run one test, you can run npm t -- and the name of the test you want to run. That way, when we change our mock service worker server, it won't rerun every test in there. Just a little hint. All right, moving on. Why don't we test the actors? Let's test adding and removing actors from a movie. So let's go down and make a new test. It adds Elijah Wood to Lord of the Rings successfully. All right, make this an async function. So what is the first thing we need to do? Well, we've loaded our data, we've selected our movie, Lord of the Rings, so now we need to get the selection over here and then double click it. So we need to find this available list box and choose an option. So let's go inspect this and click over here. All right, so the suggested query is get by role list box. So let's just copy that, and we'll do that over here. And we'll say const list box equals this thing. Oh, I think we should do a find by role, because it might not be there until we've loaded things. So let's do an await on that. And that should be good for our list box. We also need the option we're going to select. So I did add test IDs to all of these because they are dynamically generated, and there really isn't a better way that I've found to find options in a list. So if I inspect that, click on Elijah Wood, you can see we can get by role with the name Elijah Wood, but he's here and here. We wouldn't know which one we're getting if we used this query. So we're going to use this query instead. There we go. We will copy this, although he may not be actor 4 in our mock data. So we'll have to go fix that as well. So let's say const ID equals await. I'll change this to find by test ID. This needs to be a template string, and we need to find the actual ID. No, I meant to say const option equals. So I need to find the ID of Elijah Wood. So the ID is going to be from our MSW mock data. I have put that in this MSW folder over here. I've got defaults for all of our values. So we have the value actors. So let's go use that to find Elijah Wood. So I want to say actors.filter, and we'll get an actor. And if that actor's name is Elijah Wood, then we'll get that actor. Only one on the list, and I want the ID. Perfect, there we go. Now we have the list box and the option box. So to be able to double click it, we need to change the selection first. So we'll do user.selectOptions with the list box, and the option. All right, now that we've done this, we do need to double-click that option. So we actually do need to get the option. So let's say user double-click option. And once we've done that, it should actually try to add Elijah Wood to Lord of the Rings. So let's see what happens. I'm expecting an error from mock service worker telling us we don't have an endpoint. And there it is. All of our tests passed, but we need to intercept this request. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so in server.ts, let's make a new endpoint. Let's make it right over here. And to add, we need a post endpoint. So rest.post, and let's add some things to type check things. So in post, let's see here. We don't have a request body, so we can leave that the same. We don't have any special path parameter, leave that the same. And we're going to return a movie type, because that's what it returns from our function. All right, so we need to do what? Well, our first parameter is going to be backend movie actor, and we have nothing else in our path. And then we have our function. So we have our request, our response, and our context. And then we're going to return our result. So we'll give it a context delay of 150 milliseconds, and we'll give it context.json. And we need to return a movie type in there. So we've got this Lord of the Rings movie. We can just return that, because that seems fine what we're doing at the moment. There we go. And you can see it will type check this to be of a movie type. If I put that as an actor type, we would now have an error over here. So that is the nice thing about Typescript. Change that back to movie type, and everything should go good again. So let's see here. That looks like it should be correct. We don't care about the actual movie ID or the actual actor. All right, there we go. So it says it added it, but has it really? Well, we don't know. We haven't checked for that yet. So let's go find the status we're going to see. So what happens if we add an actor? Like, what happens if we add Halle Berry? It should say, successfully added Halle Berry to Lord of the Rings. So let's search for that text. And let's see, what is it telling us? Just get by text. I must have a paragraph or heading tag in there, so that's fine. So let's do that. Let's search for this text. So let's go back over here, and let's say expect await screen.find by text. And we want the text, and what should that text be? It should be successfully added. Let's just copy this. And it should say that. Although it won't be Halle Berry, it's going to be Elijah Wood. So let's say Elijah Wood, and I think that should be good, and we'll say to be in the document. That's our expectation. Let's go ahead and save that, and let's check if it worked. Okay, it did not. Let's go see what happened there. Okay, this movie name is Return of the King, so it's the third Lord of the Rings, not the first one. So we need to change it to be this, but other than that, I think it went pretty well. Let's do that, fix our test, and we'll have a bit more confidence that our test is working now that we know it failed and we're fixing it. There we go. Now we have successfully added Elijah Wood to Lord of the Rings. Perfect. All right, so what else can we do? Well, I'd also like to test that we might get an error condition. What if Elijah Wood was already on there, which he was, in fact. So we shouldn't be returning a successful message right here. We should be returning an error. But I want to test both conditions, that it was successful and that it errored out. So why don't we make another test to say it failed to add Elijah Wood because he's a duplicate. So let's do this, and we'll come down here, and we'll say fails to add Elijah Wood, or duplicate Elijah Wood, to Lord of the Rings. Okay, so we're going to do pretty much the exact same thing. We're going to find Elijah Wood's ID. We're going to find the list box in available. We're going to find the option for Elijah Wood. We're going to select the option from the list box. We're going to double click, and we expect to see this, except that's not going to be our text. So what will it say? Well, let's go over here and find out. So if I add Halle Berry twice, or actually, let's add Elijah Wood twice, it'll say something like this. Now, this text won't be correct, but let's just add it there and see what it does when we do this. So let's go ahead and hit save. Okay, obviously this didn't succeed. So what happened? It failed to find an element with the text. Well, that makes sense. What text did we get? We got successfully added Elijah Wood to Return of the King. Remember, we are mocking the endpoint, so we're returning the same thing every time. Well, that's not quite what we want. So why don't we mock an error instead? Let's go fix this so that our error comes up here. So how can we do that? Well, actually, it's pretty simple. There is a function on our server called use. And this allows us to make temporary endpoints inside here. So let's make a temporary endpoint. And all we need to do is copy that rest.post we have in the server. So let's go copy this guy real quick. Copy him over here. Put this down here. All right. We have a lot of things we're going to need to import, but we'll fix that in a minute. So this is not going to return a movie type here. It looks like it should be the HTTP exception type. So let's go change that. We'll add this over here. And finally, everything should be good. So our exception is going to be detail with a message. And message can be whatever we want it to be. Let's say failed. Let's say actor Elijah Wood is already on Return of the King. All right, so there's our message. And we are getting our types checked properly, so that looks good. We have one more thing we need to do. We need to return the right error code. So it should be a context.status of a 409 error code. And I think that should be everything. So let's go ahead and do that and see how it works. Let's hit save. Now we didn't change what we're looking for. It's still going to fail, but we should find a closer message to this. So what are we looking for over here? What do we see? We see actor Elijah Wood is already on Return of the King. Perfect. We can copy that string, and we'll use that as what we're looking for. There we go. We'll have that there. And now the test should pass. Well, there's a lot of overlap between this test and that one. So why don't we combine them into one test? So what if we had it so that the endpoint failed the first time, but worked every other time? And we can actually do that. And we only have to change one thing. We can do, instead of returning response, we return response.once. This means the very next time it's called, we will make this response. But every other time, it'll be our default response, which is pretty good for what we want. So let's say fails, then, and then succeeds to add Elijah Wood to Return of the King. All right, so it's going to fail first, and then it's going to succeed. So here is our endpoint where it's going to fail one time. We've got our list box and our option. We've got our selection, and we're double-clicking the option, and then we are expecting this. So all we have to do is try it again. So we will copy this, and we will copy our expectation, which is going to be over here. And then we should find this. So let's go ahead and comment out this test and make sure it all works. So we're running our tests. Hey, they all worked. It failed, and then it succeeded to add Elijah Wood to Return of the King. So now we have a single test that runs the failure condition and the success condition for one of our endpoints. And it only does the exception one time. So that's pretty nice. Now, I did add this between episodes. Right in here, you can see that there's this after each thing, and it resets the handlers. So if you need to make a custom endpoint during one of your tests, you can use this to reset all the handlers back to the defaults from server.typescript. So we're doing that once, and we need to do that. Otherwise, we have to make a new test before this would reset. But it's all working for what we need right now. Let's work on some tests for our categories. let's say we wanted to remove the fantasy category and then re-add it. So how do we get this checkbox here? Let's go inspect and click on the checkbox, and you can see we can do a get by role with name fantasy. So let's copy that, and let's go start writing our test. So it removes and re-adds the fantasy category to return of the king. So it'll be an async arrow function, and we'll just copy that right there. And then I want to get the category. So rather than get by role, we want to do a find by role, and we can await that. So that should be good. So all we have to do now is click the category, and it should remove it from our movie. So let's do user click on category, and let's see what happens. Okay, so we see that it captured a request without a matching handler. That's expected. We haven't made this endpoint yet, so we have to do that. But this is much more interesting. What's up with this formic problem? An update to formic inside a test was not wrapped in act. That's a problem. But what does it mean? Well, basically, formic is asynchronous. And as soon as we click on this, we are done with this test, and we are unmounting our component. We have not given formic the chance to update its state. So it is trying to update things after things have been unmounted. So basically, we need to wait and make sure that formic is done. But there was one other weird thing there. Aren't we trying to remove the category? Shouldn't fantasy already be on there? If that's the case, why is it posting and not deleting? Again, it's for the same problem. We just selected the movie from the list. We haven't given it time to fetch the data from the backend and update the state. So we need to get the category, but we need to wait for the category to become checked. So let's do that right now. Let's use wait for, and we need a function, and we're going to wait for the expectation that category.checked will be the value true. And we can do an await over here to wait the wait for, and we need to turn this into an HTML input element, and that should be all good for that. So let's see if that fixed our post into being a delete. Okay, one problem down. It's now trying to delete the category. So we do have a checked box, and we are removing the category first. That's a good start. How can we fix the other problem, that warning about the formic state? Well, all we need to do is wait for the thing to change. So we can simply do the same thing here, but we can wait for it to be false. And this will give formic time to update. And once we've done that, it won't have any more problems, and the error will go away. There we go. Now, we might not really need to do that. In fact, we'll probably be awaiting other things to happen, and that's what we'll probably end up doing. All we need is for formic to complete before our component gets unmounted. So anything that waits for that to happen should be good. Now, this is one way to do it, but you can see in our earlier test, I did not wait for that checkbox to become true. I didn't have to. We are waiting over here, we're waiting over here. Either of these gave it enough time for formic to update the state. So would it be better if I'd waited for this? Slightly, probably. And it may even be a slight race condition bug to have this here. But as long as we don't get the error, I'm not going to worry about it too much right now. So why don't we go and make that endpoint to see if we can make the mock categories. So here in our server, we can copy this endpoint right here. This is the post endpoint, which we don't need yet, but we'll go ahead and make that. And this is going to be for movie category. And I believe the return type is a movie type, just like the other one is, so all of this should be fine. But what we also need is that delete endpoint. So let's copy this, and we'll change this to a delete. I don't think we should have any problem doing either of those things. As long as we get a 200 response, this will be considered a successful deletion. All right, so let's go ahead and save that, and hopefully our tests are now not complaining about the endpoint being gone. Nope, they're not. No more problems there. So what else do we need to do? Well, I'd like to know that whatever happened gave us a message. So if we were to actually remove the category, we'd see a message like this. So why don't we search for that message? Let's go ahead and copy this. And let's look for that. So I want to do screen.findByText. And this obviously won't be the right text. We'll fix that in a minute. And we can await this. So let's do an expect to be in the document. All right. So if we save that, do our test all run now? Okay. Removes and re-adds a category. We didn't find that element, and that makes sense because our text is actually going to be this. Successfully remove category fantasy from Return of the King, which makes more sense. So why don't we replace that? And there we go. Now the test should pass. All right, so what if we wanted to have an error condition, like, I don't know, it couldn't delete that category? What would happen if we had an error over here? We've got an invalid ID or a path error. Well, let's simulate an invalid ID and see what we get there. So over here, I've copied our server use with our post and our delete endpoints from there, and I've modified them to return 404 errors, and we'll get the message being failed to remove or add invalid category ID. And again, we're using response.once to make sure we only get these things one time. So if we hit save, we should see that all of our things are going to fail now. There we go. We were unable to find the text element we're looking for because the first endpoint is going to be a failure. So let's check for that first and then check for our success. So how should we do that? What do we have down here? I've got the category. I'm waiting for it to be checked. And let's see here. I will click the category. I'll wait for it to be unchecked, except this is probably going to fail. This is probably not in the right spot because as soon as we click it, the category should be unchecked. But we're still waiting for Formic to update the state. And if Formic gets an error back, it's not going to update the state. In fact, let's move this below, and I think we will see a problem. So let's move this right down here. And we're looking for, what are we getting here right now? We're going to delete this, so we should be saying failed to remove invalid category ID. And I think we will find that. So let's go ahead and save that. All right, we've got one failed. So what do we find here? Await category checked to be false. Yeah, so why wouldn't it be false? Well, the answer is it's not going to be false. We gave it some time by waiting for this to happen, and that gave Formic enough time to update the state. So because we failed to remove the category, Formic rechecked the box for us. So that fixed things on our state. And we won't actually have this being unchecked. So that's a good check to add in there, but not there, but here. So we did get this text, so we did fail the first time. So all we have to do really is try again, basically. So what we want to do is we want to wait for this to be true. That means Formic will have reset the checkbox back to being true. And then we're going to try it again. We'll try to remove it again, the exact same category. And now we can do the same expectations. And all we have to do now is wait for it to be false. This won't be the text. I'll see what the text is in a minute. I deleted that a minute ago. But it'll be that removed the right category. So if we test that, what happens? All right, we only have one failed. We didn't get this fine thing, which makes sense because it's actually saying successfully removed category fantasy from Return of the King. All right, perfect. We'll put that in there, and then everything should pass. So now that we have this being unchecked, we can try to add the category back. So let's go ahead and do that. Basically, we're going to do the click again. But now we know our box is unchecked, we'll be hitting our post endpoint. So let's say user click category, and then we're going to wait for the error because we're going to get a failure here. So we're going to wait for this. This will be false because Formic is going to reset our state because of the failure. And what am I saying here? It should be failed to add. So this will be the message we're going to find. And after that is done, finally, we can click it one more time. And at the end, we expect the checkmark to be true. And this should be, I think, added. Not really sure. I'll put it like that, and we'll go find the text from the test. So hopefully, we're only going to see one failed test here. All right, we do have a failed test. Let's see here. Should be looking for this, so I think it just was added. So what did it fail to find? Yeah, it failed to find this. So failed to add category. Oh, that's interesting. That shouldn't have been what I saw. That's not what I expected. Let me go figure out what that means. When I was copying and pasting things, I didn't put this right. That should be movie category. So that's what was going on there, I think. Let's go ahead and check that out. All right, there we go. We have failed to get this, so now we are waiting for the category to be checked. I failed to add invalid category ID, so that was good. But now our problem is on waiting for category checked to be false. That's interesting. I would have expected it to be false there. Okay, here are my thoughts right now. We are not changing the status of the movie. So when we successfully make a change by actually removing the category, we're not doing that. Formic is re-enabling things. We can check things and uncheck things, and that mostly works, but we're not changing the actual state. So when it goes to refresh that, it sees the state is wrong, and that's why the category checkbox is still checked. We need to add another endpoint to fetch that movie. So let's go over here to our server. I want to copy this endpoint. I want to get the movie back, and we're going to return an updated version instead. So how do we want to handle this? Well, we're only going to fetch the new data one time. So I only need to remove it, update the state, and then we'll add it and we'll get our original state. So it should be a one-time change, I think. So let's see if that works. So we need to import movie type, need to import Order of the Ring movie, but this is not what we want. We need to change Lord of the Ring movie. So why don't we get some of the properties there and let's make a quick change. We'll go look in defaults.ts. So Order of the Ring movie is this. And the first thing we're doing is we are removing the category. So if we remove the category, it will no longer have this category. It will basically be an empty array here. So that's what we need to do. We need to spread that movie type out and replace categories with an empty array. And I think that will fix things. So let's do Lord of the Ring movie. Categories is an empty array. And if we do that one time, I think it will work. So let's see if I'm right about that. Okay, so I see, yeah, everything passed. But I just have the screen debug in here I didn't mean to keep in there. So if I get rid of that, things should be okay. Where is that screen debug? All right, we'll get rid of that. There we go. All of our tests are passing now. Well, I'm sure this episode is way over, so hope you have enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, help the channel out, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.